This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net. This is January 2015. A year ago, I made a video showing conflict of interest in Fox News, where they actually were putting forward support of Islam videos and at the same time criticizing Islam. In the past 2 weeks, they've made 4 apologies for making false statements about Islam and have been severely beaten up in the medium, and the Muslims are saying, see how it's just a bad Islamophobic distortion. Muslims are peaceful, terrorists don't represent Islam, and so forth. Well, Fox News used to be a source where the political correctness of what Obama wanted, the gay and lesbian agenda, the women's liberation agenda, the Muslim agenda, you could get the news without the propaganda. And that's fallen apart now. What they say true about Islam is not respected anymore. And I have some insight into that. It goes back, but let me show you a couple of the apologies that come to my attention.
The discussion I had, the larger discussion, was about radical Islamic militancy in Europe. Right. And I made a terrible, inexcusable error in identifying Birmingham as a no-go. You can use me all you want.
But where did you get that information from? Sorry to interrupt you.
A segment on the worldwide terror threat. A guest on the Fox News channel cited a poll on supposed support for a terror group, ISIS, among Muslims in France and other European countries. Well, we at Fox News have subsequently determined that that poll is not credible.
A correction now. Over the course of this last week, we have made some regrettable errors on air regarding the Muslim population
last week
in
on this program, a guest made a serious factual error that we wrongly let stand unchallenged and uncorrected. The guest asserted that the city of Birmingham, England, is totally Muslim and that it is a place where non-Muslims don't go. Both are incorrect.
Back in the 1950s and 60s, there was a very popular Catholic bishop, Fulton J. Sheen, that had a television show that I used to watch. He had many interesting things, and it kept my attention until I realized he would either to glorify something or positively that shouldn't be glorified, he would take and glorify something that was obviously true, and then pass that goodness on to the subject of his attention by association. And the same thing for the negative or evil. If he wanted to demean something that he didn't have observations to base it on, he would take something that is obviously evil or bad, and then make guilt by association. And I think that deception is part of what's going on here to discredit Fox News. Let me show you a little clip from Bishop Sheen. I will show you from the clip I made a year ago that there's reason to believe that these errors are being done, manipulated on purpose to discredit the foundation of Fox News for the sake of What I mean here is that people will not believe the truth. Here's the title from the video clip. And here's the dating information from 1956.
If youth today is protesting against the older generation, it's not because the youth is wrong, it's because the older generation has not given him that culture and those principles which youth needs and which youth believes that it should have. Why should we always, when we think of youth, immediately begin talking about juvenile delinquency? Why is it that we always pick the worst that youth shows instead of the best? When we study art, do we look at the crudest manifestations of art? Or when we study music, the babblings of a child, do we not always look to the best? Why is it that immediately juvenile delinquency comes to our mind when we speak of youth, if it is not because crime makes better news than virtue?
Let's get back to Fox News and the funny smell that's come up.
Our top story tonight, my weekend. And why it took me an hour and 15 minutes to get a cup of coffee and a bagel on Sunday morning. I'll tell you why.
Dueling protests this Sunday near Ground Zero.
Supporters and opponents of the project are both staging rallies today.
Of course, there was a crowd shouting at a random Ground Zero construction worker who happened to be walking by wearing a skull cap. Emotions were high, but why was everyone so suspicious?
Where is the money coming from?
Where are they going to get the $100 million from?
We're following the money trail. Where is this money coming from? This guy has questionable ties. Here's the one that we should all really worry about.
Here's an example of a knowingly false or misleading indication. It's pointing to Iran, and the Ground Zero mosque and the money supporting the radical Islam mosques in America is related to Saudis and the Sunni. And especially there's in Fox News is Sunni royalty from Saudi Arabia. But here he's pointing to Iran, and these Sunnis don't want anything to do with it. Iran is a threat to the Sunnis. The oil emirates and that where the English set up these monarchies, and they're dominating the Shiites and putting them in jail, and they're threatening the monarchies as well as ISIS. But that's another point.
Where's Iran in this?
Yeah, it's a little Muslim guilt by association game. Last week we called it 6 Degrees of People Who Don't Eat Bacon. And I held up a card of people showing that you could use the same logic to actually link Fox News with dangerous Saudi money, since the largest News Corp shareholder outside of the Murdoch family is the Saudi prince Al-Walid bin Talal. It's a stupid and childish game I was playing. I was not suggesting that Fox News being in business with bin Talal was actually sinister. I was just using their same reasoning to attack Imam Ralph. But this morning, Fox News got more specific about the real danger posed by the mosque's funding.
The Kingdom Foundation, which has been a funder of Imam Rauf in the past. The Kingdom Foundation, so you know, is this Saudi organization headed up by the guy who tried to give Rudy Giuliani $10 million after 9/11 that was sent back.
Right.
He funds radical madrasas all over the world.
And he funds his imam. The money might be coming from this evil Kingdom Foundation, run by a Wahhabist 9/11 sympathizing, American hating. No. That's Rupert Murdoch's partner in News Corp. Show me the dangerous money guy behind Imam Ralph's Ground Zero terror mosque. There we go. You're not changing the picture. You're. No! Why is the terror funder shaking hands? Why is the terror funder shaking hands with a two-legged basset hound? Wait, that's Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News. The terror funder is Rupert Murdoch's News Corp partner. No. That's right. The guy they're painting as a sinister money force owns part of Fox News. Let's do as Fox News commands and follow the money.
Now I'll show you a Fox News clip on a Muslim that is a friend of Fox News and that they regularly support. And he's saying false and misleading things from a clip I made a year ago.
Hello and welcome to A Spirited Debate. I'm Lauren Green. With the passing last month of Nelson Mandela, many asked the question, where is the Muslim Mandela? Well, after reading an op-ed that proclaimed there is no such figure, Qasim Rashid responded with his own op-ed on VoxNews.com, saying, yes, there is such a man. Qasim Rashid is the author of The Wrong Kind of Muslim, and he joins me now from Washington, D.C.
This is about Fox News. It is Tuesday, the 4th of February, 2014, and I just got through watching Fox News interview of a man that wrote a book about Islam, claiming how peaceful it is. And I've studied the Quran. I've lived in the Caucasus now for 14 years, spring and fall, because I married a woman there and her parents were there, needed care. And now I have a granddaughter there that needs care. And I also bought an apartment there, I think in 2002, in order to have a place for our 2x2 home ministers to go to build home churches. But Fox News I appreciated because it would take a stand against the things that are destroying the home and building autism. They take a stand against the women's libbers and the abortionists. And now I'm coming to a conclusion that they are on the other side an equal danger. As far as looking at the dangers to human society in the future, I was shocked with all the Islamic terror in my travels spring and fall to Russia and going to southern Russia. The JFK had to arrest a bunch of people going to set off bombs, Muslims. And the subway we go in Moscow, terrible. Bodies laying all over the month that we had to wait in 2000 and since then. And the planes that we flew south from Moscow on, 2 of them blown up, killing everybody, women with bombs in their burqas. And where we live in the southern Russia, it's the buses blown up, killing people. In Petrogorsk, just a bomb killing, and it's going on all the time. And I'm pretty sure I just finished a video. I'm pretty sure they took the Winter Games to Sochi to wake up Europe and America that they were giving these terrorists political asylum, thinking they were politically oppressed by Russia, because that was the dogma that we thought, and it was true. Under communism, there was a lot of political oppression of Russians as well as everybody else. The background, when I had to study Islam and study the Quran, I found out that the Roma came from 1,000 years ago, came from India when the Muslims invaded, and they were following the Quran and murdering the polytheists. But the Roma were the upper fighting class that had fought and been pushed off their land and moved to the west where there were Christian farms, and they just went on with their wagons doing for 1,000 years. Now, the academic estimate is somewhere between 140 and 170 million killed in the Afghanistan, Pakistan, India when the Muslims invaded from about 900 years after Christ, and it went on for about 300 years. Many invasions, murders, unbelievable exterminations. And I thought, oh, how terrible. And if you add up all the murders from Islam, somewhere around 170 million or whatever. And I made a chart then, and how many per year. And it turned out that communism and fascism killed that many in a lifetime. And then it turned out that women's liberation with abortion murders that many in 3 years. They make it legal, but it's killing a life. So what is more evil? On the one side, you have the Islamo-fascists. On the other side, you have the women's liberationists tearing down the home. When I was born, there was, and still amongst the Amish, it was something like 1 in 1,700 with autism. Amongst the general population now, 1 in 55 boys last year. And there is foolishness of children not being disciplined. They don't know. You have to have a relationship with a child to discipline it, and daycare doesn't provide that, the type of depth to give discipline. But so there's a lot of goofiness too, but the autism is real brain damage that you can see with the electroencephalograph. There's areas of the brain that didn't get what they needed in that during that time period as before they could walk and talk. That nerve growth factor was areas present in certain areas of the brain. That's a whole nother story. Here's Fox News, and it had some insight that there's 2 problems here. Okay, so these problems exist. I'll give you some insight. The desire of women to not stay home and care for their children, to resent their children. They love them. It's like you see these dogs will nurse kittens, and there's a maternal instinct that has survived over the millions of years of development of life. And the great apes don't kill their babies. I need to insert here that that's the maternal great apes don't kill their babies. But the Garden of Eden was that innocent time in the forest when humans didn't have logical communications. They were just doing what they needed to survive. The dominant alpha male would take whatever female he wanted and beat up the other males, and that was what survived. The strongest male and the prettiest female was attracted the male. So the behavior of the females was to the ones that acted in a way that they survived. That's one of the basic laws of nature. God's laws. What propagates is what makes the future. So some insight into these problems today, the right and left, and a little bit of an insight in the middle that I wouldn't want to share, and talk about where Fox News is. By the way, the 2 things they're talking about is Islam and all of the peaceful, and the other one is electroshock therapy. It's it's good for you. They make $2,500 in 5 minutes, but it's good for you, and I'll talk about that too. But so you've got this dominant male genetics, Islamo-fascism, and the females submit to that, and many males submit to that because the dominant male scares them. And the threat is real. Ask the Quran. Read Surah 9. That's why it's so ludicrous that they talk about all the nice things in the Quran, but the number 2, Surah 2, the Surah of abrogation, says that the old things don't count. Whatever Allah brings later is the better and replaces that. Well, Surah 9, they mix them up so then you don't know which ones really count. The Imams all know, of course, and you can go online now or on my website and see the Quran in order of precedence, what ones really count, and cut off their fingers and cut off their heads if they don't submit is still counts. Those nice things don't. After the Qurayza tribe didn't help Muhammad, he personally beheaded over 600 men, all of the men that had pubic hair, and they took the women and children as slaves and concubines. That's because they didn't help him. He come back to make war against his own polytheistic tribe, and the Jews stayed out of it rather than help him. But that was an excuse to take their women and property and children. But that is where he had the change. Before that, he used to pray toward, this is 600 years after Jesus, and he was praying towards Jerusalem, but then he changed and prayed towards the black mosque they have there now. But he had this surah of abrogation, and the Jews turned into apes and pigs. At any rate, this genetic background, it's not just the alpha male dominant genetic stuff. I had very good friends. Both of them have PhDs now. They were social studies teachers in the high school where I taught physics and math. And one of my very good friends, a roommate, told me he used to be an anarchist, but there's so little political power to anarchism, he went to socialism, communism. And I said, well, I asked when I had so much experience with Russia and how that was a disaster, what it did to the people. And he just said, well, that was because they were like a corporation and the people that were on top dominated. Well, that's what happens wherever authority is put in the hands of a few. Priesthood. Jesus died by the hands of the priest in order to tear that veil that you can have a personal relationship with your source of existence. You don't have to go to some priest or imam or build some building. The place for that outlook of godliness is in you, if you have the spirit of a child. But getting back to this anarchy stuff, that's the male resentment of the dominant male. And that's why the anarchists and feminists make a political alliance, and the gay and lesbian, there's always working together politically, and doesn't have anything to do with raising healthy children. It doesn't have anything to do with the need for the maternal nursing bond, mammalian level. It's animal level. And here we had German products like the Chevy plant in Tonawanda, New York, got German machinery in to make the motors, and after that you didn't have to go through a break-in period. They were so well machined. Is because they had quality workmanship and integrity. And the reason they had it, this is 2014. 2013 or 2012, Merkel did away with the law that married women could not get state support for daycare. It was part of the German culture that the women stay in the home and raise their children. Obama, 2 years ago in the State of the Union, said how old Germany is way ahead of us, and we've got to have more early daycare, more early education for the children. because the German students are graduating from high school a year ahead of American students. And what he didn't say was they were starting a year later, but they had the foundation of a maternal nursing bond and a mother in the home for the first 6 years. Well, they'll be losing that, and they won't have the workmanship quality to put together large corporations that function effectively and efficiently. It always amazed me. Our little home church people. I go to Moscow, and here's one there that's an attorney for it, and here's another one that's an executive for an oil company, and here's another one. They're just sending them all over the world. That they have people that they can trust, that aren't out drinking and dancing and entertaining themselves with drugs. That they have somebody with integrity that helps them build a company. But that's a whole nother thing. So we have these two issues. Fox. And Fox is somehow under the influence of this Islamo-fascist male domination. That's where they get the resentment and attack on the women's liberationists and the leftists. And I'm so sad to see it, that they would bring this falseness and parade it and give it an audience, give it an audience. Both Islam is peaceful and electroshock is good for you. Okay, let's get on with it. I'll show you.
Welcome, Kasim.
Thank you for having me back, Lauren. How are you?
Notice this greeting. It's like this man is part of the team.
Well, it's great to have you back. And before we get to the Muslim Mandela, explain your book, because the title itself is very provocative. And so I would like you to explain, more about what your book is about.
Sure. The Wrong Kind of Muslim is a book I wrote that tells the untold story of persecution of religious minorities in Pakistan, and discusses how Christian minorities, Ahmadi Muslim minorities, Shia minorities are fighting back against Taliban extremism and how they're winning.
This is a lie to those who are aware of the Quran, and an ignorance to those who have been deceived. There are nice verses in the Quran, but they don't count. I will give this background in a little bit.
And what we can do around the world to unite in that campaign for tolerance and peace.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I wanted to.
What he's saying to Muslims that believe in the Quran is, look, I'm opening the door for you to immigrate to non-Muslim countries. What he's saying to non-Muslims is, oh, we're peaceful people. We're going to come and join you, and we're going to work together.
That, because it's a very interesting book. Now let's get to the Muslim Mandela, the Muslim equivalent of a Mandela. And who is this man?
This man is His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the Khalifa of Islam and head of the worldwide Ahmadiyya Muslim community. His Holiness is a dynamic figure. He is the world's only Khalifa. And as the leader of the world's single largest Muslim organization.
Please do not be deceived. There's something in the order of 10 million Ahmadiyya. I just checked Wikipedia. The 10 million Ahmadiyya is correct, but the total Muslims is 1,750,000. That is, there's over 174 more times other Muslims than Ahmadiyya. So where he's getting his figures from and what it's deception. Okay. So it's just, let me give you some background. There are two main groups that follow the Quran. The Persian foundation of the Shia and the Arabic original Muhammad foundation of the Sunni. They follow the Quran, and when they get the opportunity, they enforce the Quran by death. The Hezbollah is a Shiite terrorist organization. There are so many Sunni terrorist organizations, and yes, they are in conflict with one another because they profess their own leadership of Islam, so they're in conflict. And it got heated up in Pakistan. By the way, the Sunni Muslims have bombed over 80 Shiite mosques since 9/11. The big problem in Pakistan is when back in the 40s, I guess it was, when Britain gave India its independence, and the Muslim parts then petitioned and murdered so many non-Muslims in the Muslim majority areas, Pakistan and Bangladesh. But in this time, so much oil money, Muslim, Saudi oil money, went to Pakistan. It's still there. Madrasas are sending children from America to go to these madrasas to memorize the Quran and come back hating America and ready for jihad. Because it's in the book, and when you indoctrinate a child, they're a robot. They don't have a choice. Some of them wake up, but it's hard to rebel when you've been deprived of your natural development. That's why the Jews have so much problem, so intellectual, but the foundation they have of memorizing the Torah, and they can't tell the difference between some logical projection and the intuitive sense of reality. That's why that's a whole nother thing. Whenever the Muslims don't have a majority, they teach that it's okay to deceive the unbeliever. That's open the doors. I'll give you some information on that later.
We are established in over 200 countries worldwide. He has advocated for well over a decade for universal freedom of conscience, for separation of mosque and state, for a removal of clerics from Muslim majority governments, to have equal justice and equal opportunity for all people regardless of their faith. He has condemned the persecution of Christians in Muslim majority countries, and he's advocated that rather than spreading Islam through any kind of force or compulsion, to only do so through dialogue, through service to humanity. And as a result, he has helped create over 600 secular educational institutions worldwide.
Now understand, for true Muslims that follow Muhammad and the Quran, this is fine. It's fine to deceive the unbeliever. They're opening doors that Muslims can move in. And you don't have to worry. The Quran and the indoctrination of the Quran will bring the true Islam to life when they have enough population. And they do it by when they get enough population to bring Sharia law and enforce, threaten, and murder the peaceful Muslims and bring true Islam. But I'll show you the source of this about lying. The question, are Muslims permitted to lie, is yes, and I will have the verses of the Quran that give guidelines about this read to you.
The Quran 16:106, establishes that there are circumstances that can compel a Muslim to tell a lie. Quran 3:28, this verse tells Muslims not to take those outside the faith as friends, unless it is to guard themselves. Quran 9:3, Allah and His Messenger are free from liability to the idolaters, the dissolution of oaths with the pagans who remained at Mecca following its capture. They did nothing wrong, but were evicted anyway. Quran 40:28, a man is introduced as a believer, but one who must hide his faith among those who are not believers. Quran 2:225. Allah will not call you to account for thoughtlessness in your oaths, but for the intention in your hearts. The context of this remark is marriage, which explains why Sharia allows spouses to lie to each other for the greater good. Quran 66:2. Allah has already ordained for you, O men, the dissolution of your oaths. Quran 3:54. And they, the disbelievers, schemed, and Allah schemed against them, and Allah is the best of schemers. The Arabic word used here for scheme or plot is makara, which literally means deceit. If Allah is deceitful toward unbelievers, then there is little basis for denying that Muslims are allowed to do the same. See also 8:30 and 10:21. Taken collectively, these verses are interpreted to mean that there are circumstances when a Muslim may be compelled to deceive others for a greater purpose.
To provide for those who don't have access to education, he helps fund countless hospitals. And in America, very close to home, he inspired the Muslims for Life blood drive. Now, this is an annual blood drive we run every year that has garnered over 30,000 blood donations in the last 3 years alone, and is done specifically to honor 9/11 victims. This man, His Holiness, about who I wrote about.
Why don't we hear more about him? It seems like he is quite busy in the world and doing a lot of good, but yet we don't hear much about him. Why is that?
Well, for starters, thank you for the opportunity to speak about him. In fact, he has been all over the world. He has spoken before British Parliament, before European Parliament. In fact, in 2012, he spoke before Congress. And the members of Congress passed or introduced a bipartisan resolution recognizing him as a man of peace. And what's really remarkable about His Holiness is that he is not only a much revered figure among millions of Muslims worldwide, but he is a peacemaker.
This is a preposterous truth. This man is teaching and deceiving world leaders all over. The Quran teaches to deceive until you have the power to terrorize and convert or kill the non-believers. That's where the 140 million deaths in Hindustan came around 900 to 1100. They murdered the unbelievers by the millions until enough of the Hindu warrior class rose up with the realization, before India was completely taken over, and the warrior class started exterminating Muslims. So they came to a fatwa, an agreement with the Hindus. We're not going to execute you. You can have your faith. Of course, they do keep executing. Look what's going on in Kashmir, and Pakistan used to be largely Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian. It's a joke. And in Pakistani occupied Kashmir, they're all been murdered. All Hindus and Christians and Shiites. But that's another thing. Look at how they've deceived the world leaders. The Quran teaches to do this, and what suckers our world leaders are. Listen to this.
I wish to say finally, as I've said many times before, that this is not a war with Islam. It angers me, as it angers the vast majority of Muslims, to hear bin Laden and his associates described as Islamic terrorists. They are terrorists, pure and simple. Islam is a peaceful and tolerant religion, and the acts of these people are wholly contrary to the teachings of the Quran.
I find it hard to believe that this man is this ignorant of the Quran and of Islam after all the experience that the British had with India and the terror and murder and beheadings in the Islamic parts of India, and the way they murdered and made separate areas wherever it was majority Muslim, Pakistan and Bangladesh, and the murdering is still going on.
I also want to speak tonight directly to Muslims throughout the world. We respect your faith. It's practiced freely by many millions of Americans, and by millions more in countries that America counts as friends. Its teachings are good and peaceful. And those who commit evil in the name of Allah blaspheme the name of Allah.
I don't know whether that's ignorance or purposed deceit, but read the Quran and look at reality. The Quran is Allah's word through Muhammad. And the purpose is to gain world domination through bringing submission through terrorism and killing the unbeliever. And that's what's been going on. The men get rewarded to have power in this life, booty and women in the process, or to go to get virgins if they're killed in the process, and get great rewards in the hereafter with Allah. That's the truth. It's a pyramid scheme, and it's been building ever 600 years after Christ. It hasn't stopped. How Bush can be so deceived having the Saudi royalty to his ranch in Texas, I don't know. And that the Saudi royalty were all able to get out of America at the 9/11 bombings. I'm without words to deal with this. Ignorance or deception, I don't know.
And in our Congress right now, you can see how divided it seems. People from the far right and far left have both recognized His Holiness and endorsed His Holiness as a man of peace and as a man of progress for humanity.
For those who don't know much about the Islamic faith, the Muslim faith, we know Sunni and Shia, but he's not either one of those. Is that correct?
Well, actually, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community are Muslims who believe in the Messiah Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. We believe that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was that same Messiah foretold in ancient scriptures, the Quran, in the Bible. His Holiness, the Khalifa of Islam, is the Caliph for that Messiah. And Ahmadi Muslims are, in fact, Sunni Muslims. So we are a sect of Sunni Islam.
What he's saying is that his leader is the Christ. That Jesus was not the Christ. Jesus, according to Islam, didn't die on the cross. He is not the firstborn son of God. He is a prophet, subordinate to the prophet Muhammad. Muhammad, as a camel driver, heard about Jesus, even though it was 600 years after Jesus, and he heard about the infancy gospel of Thomas, which was in Ethiopia and Egypt. And in that, Jesus made mud birds and blew on them, and they flew away. That's in the Quran twice. The infancy gospel of Thomas, a goofy book written some 100 years after Christ. But let's get on with it.
But from the perspective of categorizing only one or the other, Sunni is a better way to go.
Now, you say in your rebuttal that every faith has extremists, and this is one comment you've made that has garnered a lot of criticism. But explain before I read some of the criticisms.
Well, I think it goes without saying every faith has extremists. Very shortly we saw Anders Breivik, who claims to be a Christian. Timothy McVeigh claimed to be a Christian, and they did some of the most horrific atrocities in the name of Christ. Now, as a Muslim, I would never...
No, I have to stop you though, because I don't think they actually did it in the name of Christ. I mean, they were not, and they got no endorsement from any kind of clergy person.
She's right. He's lying to make a point. But further than that, just like last March, there was a Muslim coup in Central African Republic, majority Christian country, but the machetes, the salika, come in and with their weapons, killing, murdering, raping, beheading, and established a Muslim government. But the majority Christians then decided to arm, and they formed the anti-salika, the anti-machetes, and started murdering the Muslim invaders and the local Muslims that were entertaining them. So then France got involved to save the Muslims. The Muslims were being killed. And then the EU has gotten involved in the African Union, and they have Chadian troops from a Muslim country there. And in the capital, Bangui, they rescued a bunch of these Salika terrorists from the Christians and escorted them out of town. Read the news last week. These rescued Salikas went, and the Chadian Muslim army took them into safety. And they went to a village and surrounded the village, blocked it, and not murdered. And it's those Christians, they're killing Muslims. Oh, the same thing. The Buddhists in Myanmar. Here, an innocent Buddhist monk riding on the back of a motorcycle, just for example, gets ripped off and taken to a mosque and mutilated physically, his parts cut out. And the Buddhists take a stand against Muslims because they've had this rape and Islamic terrorism in the areas where they had a growing Muslim population that wasn't even part of the country. They were brought there by the British. All bad Buddhists. They're killing Muslims. Oh, there's many nice Muslims that don't go by the Quran, but they're the first ones to be terrorized, like in the Caucasus. You don't want to be a peaceful imam in the Caucasus. You don't want to be a peaceful imam in Nigeria. It's just killed. Nigeria, Boko Haram killed a peace-preaching imam and his wife while she was holding the baby in the car, and killed the baby too, because they're preaching peace to Muslims. It's okay to preach it to the unbeliever to make it safe for Muslims to come. And the true Quranic Muslims let the peaceful Muslims go ahead and make a road for them so they can drive in, and then they bring their terror to the peaceful Muslims. Just look at what's happening in Pakistan. What he's saying isn't true. They're killing Christians, but it's not just Islam. The same thing happens in India with the upper caste. The lower caste that are just cleaning toilets want to get out of it, and many of them convert to Christian, and they're murdered for changing their caste. Let's get back to Fox News and the funny smell that's come up.
The money might be coming from this evil Kingdom Foundation, run by a Wahhabist 9/11 sympathizing, American hating. No. That's Rupert Murdoch's partner in News Corps. Show me the dangerous money guy behind Imam Ralph's Ground Zero Terror Mosque. There we go. You're not changing the picture. You're No! Why is the terror funder shaking hands? Why is the terror funder shaking hands with a two-legged basset hound? Wait, that's Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News. The terror funder is Rupert Murdoch's News Corps partner. No! That's right. The guy they're painting as a sinister money force owns part of Fox News. Let's do his Fox News commands and follow the money. This is the proposed terror mosque. We know that it's a terror mosque because the money may be coming from a bad guy who definitely owns part of Fox News. Now, we know that he's a bad guy because we just heard it on Fox News. And by hearing it on Fox News, News, watching Fox News, I'm increasing their viewership. And their advertising rates go up. Now, part of that money goes to the bad guy we learned about on Fox because he's their part owner, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, allowing him then to make it rain, so to speak, on the terror mosque. My point is this. If we want to cut off funding to the terror mosque, we must, together as a nation, stop watching Fox. It's the only It's the only way to cut off the revenue stream to these bad dudes. Now here's the most curious part about this entire report.
The Kingdom Foundation, so you know, is this Saudi organization headed up by the guy who tried to give Rudy Giuliani $10 million after 9/11 that was sent back.
Right.
He funds radical madrasas all over the world.
And he funds his imam. Fox tells us the terrible thing about this Kingdom Foundation is where they fund it. It's a very bad guy. But they never mentioned this fella's name. And they never showed this fella's picture. And they certainly never mentioned that the fellow they're talking about is part owner of their company. Did the gang at Fox and Friends genuinely not know the head of the Kingdom Foundation's name and the fact that he is one of their part owners? Or were they purposely covering it up because it did not help their fear-driven narrative? For more, we're joined by senior media analyst John Oliver and Wyatt Sinat. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thanks very much. John, do you know what? I'm going to go with they didn't know. Remember, things are hectic on the morning show, plus Gretchen isn't there and she's the only one who knows how to use Google. Also, it was probably a Hooters Freedom Monday. I just think at the end of the day, they didn't know.
So you're...
Exactly. I'm with stupid.
All right. Wyatt.
Nobody's that stupid. They're deliberately hiding the truth. If Al-Walid wasn't part owner of Fox News, they'd have gone to town demonizing this guy. They would have said his full name over and over again. Al-Walid bin Talal. Al-Walid bin Talal. And look at these villainous pictures. You don't even need to doctor him. He already looks like he's about to feed Timothy Dalton to his white tiger. Fox wants to allude to Al-Walid, but doesn't want viewers looking the guy up and learning about their own ties to him.
But then, Wyatt, why mention this guy at all? Why get into the money trail of this cultural center if it leads right back to Fox?
I'll take this one. Because they're stupid, John. Staggeringly, achingly, almost inspiringly stupid. Look, let's look at the evidence here.
China is not too far away, and it's a great big country that it needs a whole bunch of stuff.
When I first saw this logo, I wasn't really thinking this, but upon further review, perhaps I should have been. And that is, if you look at the Nuclear Security Summit logo, what does that have in common with all those other flags there?
I just wanted to see how much of an insult it was to be called an ignoramus. Since I didn't know what it meant, I just Googled it. For all of you out there who don't know what ignoramus is, like
it can't be good.
It's an ignorant lawyer.
Let's break that down. She didn't know what ignoramus meant, so she looked it up, and she still got it wrong. John, even if they did know Al-Walid's ties to News Corp, the odds of getting them to mention it on the program would be random at best. You do know they don't even have a teleprompter at Fox News. It's just a man jangling his keys above the camera.
Look, I'll give you kill meat and Doocy, but do you know who Dan Senor and Dana Perino used to work for? George W. Bush. And do you know who George W. Bush used to hang with? Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. Bum, bum, bum. That's some evil. It's a level of knowing obfuscation that can only come from having a heart of pure evil.
Guys, this is obviously a very polarizing debate. There's lots of contradictory evidence. Is there a chance there is perhaps a third, less less explosive explanation, something else.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not, John. These are the only two possible explanations, because if they're not as stupid as I believe them to be, they are really evil.
And if they're not as evil as I think they are stupid. Yeah. We're talking potatoes with mouths.
Not even potatoes, White. A potato can still power a digital clock. So
that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Rocks. Yeah. You're talking about rocks with mouths.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you two can come to some agreement. Thank you very much. John Oliver, Wyatt Snack. We'll be right back.
Then after the breakup of the Soviet Union, which in large part was the Americans and the Saudi Arabians building the Afghanistani Muslims, giving them handheld rockets to shoot down Russian airplanes with 100 soldiers in them. That, along with the torture of soldiers and the soldiers being taken slave, they still get soldiers back in Russia that are find deprived of being locked in cellars and what have you, and made used as slaves. It's true. Look into it. But at any rate, after the breakup of the Soviet Union, Kosovo had the Kosovo Liberation Army, and they had Muslims from Russia, from Afghanistan, from Saudi Arabia. Take a look at. I want to warn you, these pictures are gruesome, and I'll have the captions read to you. Watch this. Kosovo has largely been cleansed of Christians now by illegal aliens immigrating from Albania, Muslim Albanians, and terrorizing the Christians. And Kosovo gave, Clinton gave them this city, and here's the whole village turning out to destroy a church. It's not a radical jihadists, it's the whole community celebrating as they destroy this Orthodox church.
Mira Lapian kanë ardhur këtu te Kisha Ortodokse në Besjan për të shprehur revoltën e tyre ndaj ngjarjeve që kanë ndodhur në Kosovë. Mira Lapian kanë ardhur këtu te Kisha Ortodokse në Besjan për të shprehur revoltën e tyre ndaj ngjarjeve tragjike që kanë ndodhur në Kosovë. Mira protestues Lapian kanë dalur këtu te Kisha Ortodokse në Besjan dhe e dogjën atë për të shprehur revoltën e tyre ndaj ngjarjeve tragjike që kanë ndodhur ditë më parë në Kosovë. Testuesit ose diçka tjetër?
Diçka kena mujt, i kena marrë, mos atë sigurisht për rrugë, e kena siguruar rrugën për tash.
Tamam, pej edhe profilin që shkon tash, po mos e protestën se kemi këtu bashkëpunim me ta.
As these illegal Muslim immigrants from Albania have ethnically cleansed this Christian Orthodox homeland, they've murdered many and burned over 80 churches. And they put a statue up to honor Clinton for giving them this Orthodox Christian homeland. Taking this, all these churches being destroyed and burned. And it's going on because Clinton liberated them. But at any rate, let's get on with, look at Bill Clinton pleasing these people. And when Hillary ran for president, they had to disclose where the money come for the Clinton Library. And literally, he got millions of oil dollars for giving Orthodox Kosovo to the Muslims. They're training terrorists there now for Syria and for the Caucasus. But that was one of the, just like Turkey was the land of the seven churches. The Muslims came in peacefully. We're nice people. We'll work for you. But once they became a majority, first they started threatening, and they got the Roma to convert to Islam. And then they could use the Roma against the Christians. That's a whole nother thing. Let's get back to this thing. Kosovo. Hitler cooperated with the Muslims too, and the largest Waffen-SS group was mostly Muslim in that area, killing Christians and Jews and Christian Roma.
Assalamu alaikum and greetings to everyone attending the Islamic Society of North America 37th Annual Convention. I'm so glad to have this opportunity to join you in recognizing the wonderful contributions the American Muslim community has made to the progress of our nation and to the strength of our communities. For nearly 4 decades now, ISNA has served America's Muslims and its more than 300 community and professional organizations with distinction, working for better schools and better programs, building bridges not just between one another but to the larger American community. But that's nothing new for the nearly 7 million Muslims in America. From trade and commerce to the arts and sciences to public affairs and public life, you've always been at the forefront of progress, helping to bring the values of hard work, faith, and family to the forefront of our nation. For generations now, you've contributed not just to our material fortune, but to our moral fortitude. For that, all Americans owe you our respect and our heartfelt thanks. The Quran tells us that we are made into nations and tribes, that we may know each other, not that we may despise each other.
What Clinton says about the Quran is not true, and this hurts. It hurts Muslims. And remember when Hillary ran for president, she had to disclose where the money for the Clinton library came from. It was from the Muslims. It was part of his multi-million-dollar reward for giving them Kosovo. The truth about the Quran, I'll have Surah 9 read to you in just a minute. But the peace-preaching imams worldwide are being murdered wherever the Muslims get a majority. Just Google peace-preaching imam killed, and worldwide you'll see, whether it's in Nigeria or in Pakistan or in Russia, it's where there's majority Muslims, and the first group that they terrorize is the Muslims. And this teaching to rhetorically memorize the Quran, he learned that from the Jews and the memorization of the Torah, as Muhammad did. And that's where this practice came from in Islam. But it makes robots, murdering robots, suicidal murdering robots, following the truth in the Quran, not what Clinton is saying. How is this helping Muslims when we've got to help and help the peace-preaching Muslims understand that they're caught in a cult that resorts to suicide and murder to reinforce what the Quran says, to bring about the world domination of Islam. But here's some on Surah 9 for you, what the Quran really says, and this is not abrogated.
Surah 9 verse 1, this is a declaration of immunity by Allah and His Apostle towards those of the idolaters with whom you made an agreement. Surah 9 verse 2, so go about in the land for 4 months and know that you cannot weaken Allah and that Allah will bring disgrace to the unbelievers. Surah 9 verse 3, and an announcement from Allah and His Apostle to the people on the day of the greater pilgrimage that Allah and His Apostle are free from liability to the idolaters. Therefore, if you repent, it will be better for you, and if you turn back, then know that you will not weaken Allah, and announce painful punishment to those who disbelieve. Surah 9 verse 4, except those of the idolaters with whom you made an agreement, then they have not failed you in anything and have not backed up anyone against you, so fulfill their agreement to the end of their term. Surely Allah loves those who are careful of their duty. Surah 9 verse 5, so, when the sacred months have passed away, then slay the idolaters, wherever you find them, and take them captives and besiege them and lie in wait for them in every ambush. Then, if they repent and keep up prayer and pay the poor rate, extortion, leave their way free to them. Surely Allah is forgiving, merciful.
American Muslims are living proof that people of different backgrounds can coexist peacefully in a diverse world as one community.
Serial killers motivated by an affinity for Islamicist jihad. 2002 October, John Allen Muhammad, Lee Boyd Naldo. The Beltway sniper attacks were a series of coordinated shootings that took place over 3 weeks in October 2002 in Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. 10 people were killed and 3 other victims were critically injured in several locations throughout the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area and along Interstate 95 in Virginia. It was widely speculated that a single sniper, initially identified as a white man with assumed military experience, was using the Interstate 495 Capitol Beltway for travel, possibly in a white van or truck. It was later learned that the rampage was perpetrated by an African-American man born as John Allen Williams. Muhammad joined the Nation of Islam in 1987 and later changed his surname to Muhammad. John Allen Muhammad, and a minor, Lee Boyd Naldo, then aged 17 and originally from Jamaica, driving a blue 1990 Chevrolet Caprice sedan, and had apparently started in February 2002 with murders and robberies in Alabama, Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, and Washington State, which resulted in 7 deaths and 7 injuries, bringing the total victim count to 17 deaths and 10 injuries in Alabama, Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Maryland, Texas, Virginia, and Washington State, as well as D.C. left square bracket 1 right square bracket. In September 2003, Muhammad was sentenced to death. 1 month later, Naldo was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. On November 10, 2009, Muhammad was executed by lethal injection at the Greensville Correctional Center near Jarrett, Virginia.
We must all learn to celebrate, not just to tolerate our diversity. No one should have to face discrimination or fear violence because of the way they speak, the way they look, or the way they worship God.
But what about a book that says you must worship Allah and honor His apostle Muhammad or die? And that this book is used to indoctrinate young children, that they are programmed. Suicide, murder, it's all part of their service to Allah according to the Quran. And you say it's a peaceful book, you're lying. It's not. Peace is after everything except Islam is done away with. That's what the peace is in the Quran. Here is what was thought to be the motivation for that serial killer.
Serial killers motivated by an affinity for Islamicist jihad. A series of trial exhibits suggested Naldo and Muhammad were motivated by an affinity for Islamicist jihad. Left square bracket 34 right square bracket exhibit 65-6. A self-portrait of Naldo in the crosshairs of a gun spoke shouting, Allah Akbar. The word Salam scrawled vertically. A lyric from Bob Marley's Natural Mystic. Many more will have to suffer. Many more will have to die. Don't ask me why. Exhibit 65-16. A portrait of Saddam Hussein with the words Inshallah and the Protector, surrounded by rockets labeled chin and neck. Exhibit 65-43. Father and son portrait of Naldo and Muhammad. We will kill them all. Jihad. Exhibit 65-56. A self-portrait of Naldo as sniper, lying in wait, with his rifle. Jihad written in bold letters. Exhibit 65-67, a suicide bomber labeled Hamas walking into a McDonald's restaurant. Another drawing of the Twin Towers burning captioned, 85% chance Zionists did this. More scrolls, Allah Akbar, Jihad, and Islam will explode. Exhibit 65-103, a line accompanies chapter and verse from the Quran, Surah 2190. Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you and slay them, wherever ye cast them. Exhibit 65-109, portrait of Osama bin Laden, caption servant of Allah. Exhibit 65-117, the White House. drawn in crosshairs, surrounded by missiles, with a warning. September 11th, we will ensure will look like a picnic to you and you will bleed to death little by little. Exhibit 65 to 101. Nalvo's thought for the day. Islam the only true guidance, the way of peace. At the 2006 trial of Muhammad, Nalvo testified that the aim of the killing spree was to kidnap children for the purpose of extorting money from the government and to set up a camp to train children how to terrorize cities, left square bracket 35 right square bracket, with the ultimate goal being to shut things down across the United States. Left square bracket 36 right square bracket.
We need leaders that'll say the truth about the Quran. There are true Muslims who say the truth about the Quran, that they're to terrorize and murder, behead, and whatever of the unbelievers that reject Islam. And that it's not a secret that they're doing this terrorism and looking for the attention on purpose. They're not trying to hide. They hide their face so that, like any criminal, so you don't know who they are to arrest them when they're not in control. But so they're saying the truth. Look at how many women are converting to Islam. Terror has its... Look at how many prisoners in jail are converting to Islam. There's a psychology here that is real. And it's at any rate, there are true Muslims who are saying the truth about the instructions that they get from the Quran. And there are true Muslims who are deceiving the unbeliever to make way for Islam to move into areas where it doesn't dominate yet. And there are good people who were born Muslim who don't understand Quran. And there are good Muslim families. The women tend to stay in the home and do a better job in that respect of the animal level, giving health to the infants, that there would be less autism and they would have more strength, whether for jihad or to be missionaries for Christ. But so there was those three types, and I could show you examples of them. But I live in Russia 3 months in the spring and 3 months in the fall. I'm in the States summer and winter. So I pass through John F. Kennedy 4 times a year. And here's about John F. Kennedy was going to be blown up. But pay attention and see where this is going.
Last updated, Sunday, the 3rd of June 2007, 2nd, Greenwich Mean Time 3:56 JFK's fuel tanks and pipeline were the target of the alleged plot. Had the plot been carried out, it could have resulted in unfathomable damage, deaths and destruction. U.S. Attorney Ruslan Moskov, JFK bought plot charges. U.S. Attorney Ruslan Moskov said the plot was chilling. 4 people have been charged in the U.S. overplot to bomb John F. Kennedy Airport in New York, U.S. officials said. They include a former cargo worker and a former MP for the Caribbean nation of Guyana. One of the suspects is a fugitive, believed to be in Trinidad. The plot, which did not go past the planning stages, involved blowing up the airport's fuel tanks and pipeline, Justice Department officials said. One arrest was in New York and the other 2 took place in Trinidad. The 4 men are charged with conspiring to bomb one of the busiest airports in the United States. It was one of the most chilling plots imaginable, U.S. Attorney Ruslan Moskov told a news conference. Had the plot been carried out, it could have resulted in unfathomable damage, deaths and destruction. The pipeline is 40 miles, 64 kilometers, long and carries jet fuel from New Jersey and through the New York boroughs of Staten Island, Brooklyn and Queens. The pipeline serves 2 other airports in the area, LaGuardia and Newark Liberty. They took extensive measures to seek expert advice, finances and explosives.
Now here's a British Broadcasting Company's background investigation into these people that were going to blow up JFK.
Terror on our doorstep. Profile. Jamaat al-Muslimin by Robert Walker, BBC News, Sunday, the 3rd of June 2007. U.S. officials say 4 men charged over an alleged plot to blow up John F. Kennedy Airport in New York have connections with Muslim extremists, including Jamaat al-Muslimin, a radical Islamic group based in Trinidad. There has been no comment from the group about the allegations. Jamaat al-Muslimin first came to attention in 1990, when it tried to overthrow the government of Trinidad and Tobago. More than 100 armed men stormed the parliament building and took the prime minister and members of the cabinet hostage. Jamaat al-Muslimin, Muslim social group in Trinidad. 140 members took part in 1990 coup attempt, stormed parliament and Trinidad and Tobago TD, taking cabinet hostage. 24 people died during coup. Group led by Yazid Abu Bakr. Those jailed for the coup were freed in 1992. Accused of links to criminal gangs, the militants surrendered after 6 days, claiming they had been granted an amnesty. And, although they were arrested, a court later agreed they should be freed. Since then, Jamaat al-Muslimin has had several run-ins with the authorities. The group was linked to a series of bombings, but denied involvement. Last year, the organization's leader, Yazid Abu Bakr, was acquitted of charges of conspiracy to murder 2 former members of his organization. The population of Trinidad and Tobago is mainly Hindu and Catholic. There is a small Muslim community, most of whom are Asian. But Jamaat al-Muslimin draws its support from the even smaller number of Muslims of African descent. There is little history of Islamic militancy in the Caribbean. But security analysts have suggested the region could be attractive as a base for terrorist groups because of its proximity to the United States, its porous borders, and because of the widespread poverty on the islands.
What you're about to see comes directly from the Quran.
There's another one. Oh, there's another one. Another plane just rolled down on itself, and it is not there anymore.
At the time, I was in the process center, getting ready to process to my first tour to Afghanistan.
So November 5th, we're going through our medical screening, which we have to go through every time we get ready to go on a deployment.
I just got to Fort Hood actually 24 hours before November 5th. The unit I was attached to at the time, we were deploying out to Iraq.
Came in after lunch and they told me to come back at 1, and when I came back it was all filled up, so I had to sit in the overflow seating.
Approximately 1300 or 1 p.m. I was washing my patrol car, starting to get ready for my end of shift, and had a call from dispatch that shots had been fired at the SRP site.
Thank you. We're tracking the breaking news out of Fort Hood, Texas. There's been a mass shooting at the Army post there.
One of the worst tragedies ever at a U.S. military installation.
There was a single shooter that was shot multiple times at the scene. However, he was not killed as previously reported.
Authorities say the shooter is 39-year-old Major Nadal Malik Hassan, a military psychiatrist who was reportedly about to be shipped overseas.
Muslims rejoicing in the carnage. They call themselves the Revolution Muslim. Today on their website, they called the alleged shooter, Major Hassan, an officer and a gentleman. They said, quote, "We love you." At the same time, they called the slain soldiers terrorists who are in, quote, eternal hellfire. These men are radicals, but they are also Americans, believe it or not, who praise Osama bin Laden and celebrate the 9/11 attacks. So what's so extraordinary is that we found them out in broad daylight, out on the streets of New York, trying to spread their message just a few feet from a peaceful American mosque. Drew Griffin of CNN Special Investigations Unit has this Uncovering America report.
For 20 years, the Muslim faithful have been drawn to this gleaming mosque in the heart of New York. It is time for afternoon prayers. American Muslims and Muslims from overseas, as many as 4,000 visit here every day. They come to praise Allah, give thanks, and to pray for peace. Imam Shamsi Ali preaches against terror here, against the violence that right now sweeps many Muslim countries. But just outside the gates to his mosque, radical Muslims are preaching a very different view.
How big a threat are these people who come here, will maybe here today, and trying to reach your congregation?
Islam is about peace. Islam is about moderation. Islam is about friendship. Islam opposes any kind of hatred against anybody.
These are the brothers of Revolution Muslim.
We tell you Muslims to rise up.
They are recruiting just outside New York's 96th Street Mosque.
That the Quran commands that you disavow and make hatred and enmity between democracy, between nationalism, between secularism, and that you see Obama as the enemy he really is. That you see the United States as the enemy it really is.
Youssef al-Khattab, a Jew who lived in Israel and abruptly converted to Islam, and Yunus Abdullah Muhammad, also a convert, both born and raised in the United States, a country whose way of life they say they hate. And if you are not a Muslim, they count you as a disbeliever. Their mission? To terrorize you.
We're commanded to terrorize the disbelievers. And this is a religion, like I said.
Commanded to terrorize the disbelievers?
The Quran says very clearly in the Arabic language, Turhibuna. This means terrorize them. It's a command from Allah.
He apparently walked into a processing center Thursday afternoon and opened fire on his fellow comrades.
He got up, stepped in front of me as I was signing soldiers in.
It sounded like somebody just started yelling out, Allah Akbar.
He yelled Allah Akbar and started shooting.
Yelled Allah Akbar, which God is great, twice. Reached up on the right side of his ACU top, pulled out his weapon with his right hand, fist and palm, turned the lasers on, pointed the weapon at the other soldiers that were sitting down in the chairs, and he started discharging his weapon inside the building.
Approaching the scene, approximately 2 blocks out, I could just see soldiers running in all different directions.
The first round of bullets, one hit me in the chest. I had to go down to the ground, get cover, and I obviously couldn't breathe because I had been shot.
The shots started firing. I didn't know what the noise was. I'd never heard it before.
And then all of a sudden, like, everybody just starts freaking out and panicking. So me and my buddy just dropped down and low crawled to the hallway behind us, where then we encountered a female soldier laying on the floor in a fetal position, holding her stomach, saying, "My baby, my baby."
I got out of my patrol car and ran up a slight incline to one of the rectangular buildings.
The laser went across my line of eyesight. I blinked. That time he discharged a weapon.
And I looked left and saw the flash of a red laser in my direction and heard gunshots.
And the first round hit me in the head. It felt like I'm driving to the hole playing basketball, called an elbow to the head, a strong elbow. I took 2 steps back, spun around, hit the floor.
He shot me in the arm and then was shooting in another direction, and then he shot me 2 more times.
When I turned around, I turned my back on him, and he shot me on the side. So he shot me on my femur, on my side, my femur.
I saw him, and he was firing at soldiers behind me and that were between him and I. So I began to return fire to him.
And I was trying to crawl behind the desk to gather myself so I can go ahead and finish the fight inside. Even though I didn't have anything to fight with, anything but a laptop computer and a pen.
And I released the table that I was attempting to rush the shooter with. Hassan had reloaded a second magazine out of his right cargo pocket, popped it in, charged the handle, and began firing at me.
For that man to know how to combat reload like that, he had to have a substantial amount of practice. Like, he was like professional at it. Like, you would think we were coming against a special forces guy.
He shot me through the left hip. The bullet went through my left hip pocket, went through my left intestine, both large and small.
I was being splattered from the brick of the corner of the building, and I was instantly hitting my hand, but my hand was directly behind my head, so I had to duck my head to avoid getting hit in the head. And then when I peeked back around, he was within feet of me.
For a second, I just pretended like I was already dead, because I knew that if he had seen me, he was gonna, and I was still alive and crawling around, that he was gonna finish me off.
He came around the corner. Within 6 to 8 feet, we began to just fire blindly upon each other. He hit me next in my thigh, which didn't take me down. And then the next shot was in my knee, which had ended up shattering my knee in like 120 pieces. So I felt pain immediately and went down on the ground and tried to continue to fire on him.
But it's the look on his face while he was shooting it wasn't a battle cry, it wasn't a grimace, it wasn't a smirk. It was just a cold, hard look as if he did not care. In his eyes, I mean, I couldn't even tell the difference between his pupil and his eyes, kind of like a shark's eyes.
He was in contact with radical elements overseas. He was obsessed with his Muslim faith, and I think nothing was done, in part because I think of political correctness.
He felt that was his own little way of assisting his brethren in the battle against the United States, because that was his jihad, his holy war. And he was following in direct order that was given to him by one of his confidants, who he was in constant communication with throughout the latter part of his military career.
The United States had been seeking to kill or capture al-Awlaki for almost 2 years.
Awlaki is a terrorist. Probably the most significant risk to the U.S. homeland.
To never underestimate the power of fear, especially when the enemy of Allah hears Allahu Akbar.
U.S. authorities say the accused gunman at Fort Hood, Major Nidal Hassan, killed 13 soldiers after Awlaki provided religious justification for jihad in a series of emails.
You know, put all politics aside. Let's deal with the real case. And the real case is it was discovered, has been discovered, rediscovered, that this was part of a terrorist activity.
The Army knew he was in contact. The FBI knew he was in contact all the way from 2005 up to the shooting. He had email messages and conversations. They knew he was in contact with them, and they did nothing.
Well, since the tragic incident, it's been downplayed. First, it was a workplace violence incident. Senior intelligence officials, including your predecessor, downplayed the email exchanges between Mr. Hassan and al-Awlaki, which always concerned me. One of these emails particularly literally outlines exactly what Major Hassan did, and it's the one on May 27th, 2009. And at the end of it, he says, so I would assume that suicide bombers whose aim is to kill enemy soldiers or their helpers, but also kill innocents in the process, is acceptable. I mean, there is a huge red flag in this email.
But it's really clear that it was a terrorist attack. He had emails with, at the time, our #1 terrorist. He yelled Allah Akbar. He wanted to be a terrorist. That's what he wanted. He sold all his stuff knowing that he was going to die that day.
At one point, for instance, he stated in front of a group of them that he thought a Muslim American soldier would be justified in killing his comrades in defense of Islam. But rather than reporting that immediately, they kept quiet. And Major Hassan was actually promoted after making statements like that.
The fact that he's referencing suicide bombings and, I mean, referencing basically a suicide attack that happened in Iraq in 2003 or 2004, you know, saying that this was justified. I mean, I don't know how somebody couldn't see him as a danger. How, you know, one of the things that when the FBI was looking through these emails and realizing that he's communicating with Anwar al-Awlaki and basically looking for a pat on the back because he's saying, hey, I believe in the same things that you believe.
It has been put out in House, Congress, and Senate meetings that the terrorist attack that happened on November 5th in 2009 has been declared as workplace violence.
In workplace violence, people are disgruntled about pay, they're frustrated over promotions, This person was angry at what was being done, he felt, against his own religion, and he wanted to take people out.
Right now, he's got a beard that he's refusing to shave because of his religion. I recognize it as an act of terrorism for what it is, because if we label it as something else, it's not making it go away, and it's not bringing awareness that needs to be brought up.
You have 14 that are dead, not 13, because one of the soldiers that were killed, she was pregnant. A future leader.
It's disgraceful that they don't want to recognize the soldiers for their sacrifice. I mean, they were fighting a domestic enemy. I mean, they were killed and wounded by a domestic enemy. Somebody who was there that day to kill soldiers to prevent them from deploying. You know, if that's not an act of war or an act of terrorism, I mean, I don't know what is.
Workplace violence is not a Muslim jihadist terrorist in camouflage by wearing U.S. Army military uniforms, opening fire on unarmed, unprotected soldiers who are just trying to go down range to help soldiers deal with the things that went on in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's not workplace violence. That's terrorism. And I pray every night that somebody will finally care enough to make it what it really is.